Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Communication 24/7 podcast, where we communicate about how we communicate. I'm your host, Jen Furlong, and I have a very special guest today, Kim Hamer. I'm especially excited to talk with you, Kim, today because I actually am just getting back from a mammogram appointment. So, how
Okay.
appropriate that we are going to be talking about cancer, when cancer strikes, and how to, best support employees and their families when they're going through this. I put the word out that, I wanted everybody watching this because this is something, unfortunately, that that can impact anyone. I mean, there's really no rhyme or reason to a lot of times when you're
Yeah.
diagnosed with cancer. So, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your background and what led you to creating 100 acts of love and achieving the goal that you're trying to achieve?
Sure. So back in 2006, my 6'6" tall, athletic, organic eating husband was diagnosed with large B cell lymphoma, super aggressive. If we
Mm.
had been waited a couple more weeks, it was already in his lungs. It had already metastasized all over his body, or a large part of his body, and it was in his lungs. And if we had waited another couple weeks, it would have been too late.
Mm.
And so we had sort of an unsaid agreement between the two of us that, he would battle this cancer, or, he would try to get himself unentangled, I often say, and
Mm.
I would manage everything else. And we quickly learned that there's a phrase that everyone says: if you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
We quickly learned that first it felt really good, and then we learned how useless that sentence
Mhm.
really is. But we also learned how these small little things that people did were so incredibly helpful. And I started calling them acts of love because that's what they felt
Mhm.
like. Like, here's a lasagna. We love you. Let me
Yes.
give Art a ride to the treatment center because we love him. Let me take the
Mhm.
kids. We're going to pick the kids up after school and not drop them back to you till 9 p.m. on a Friday night because we love them and we love you. So he got himself untangled in little less than 8 months, and then 2 years later, the cancer came back, returned with a
Mm.
vengeance, and then 4 months after that, my husband died at the age of
Mhm.
44. And it was at that time, obviously, that the things that people did were really, really, really helpful. And um, a couple years later, I went back into the HR field. And when I noticed this, I noticed, like, in the regular world, people didn't know what to do or what to say. They didn't know how to help. And that's the same thing that happens in a corporate environment or in a business environment. Organizations don't know what to do or how to help an employee dealing with cancer or employee affected by cancer. And I kind of brought those two things together, and that's how I launched my business, which is supporting managers and HR teams in helping them support team members who are being affected by cancer or really any type of health crisis. Because unfortunately, we see it all the time. Organizations just don't do anything,
Yeah.
and they leave it to managers to try to figure out. And a manager, this is not part of management 101.
Right.
And so they're left kind of scrambling and trying to figure out. And unfortunately, they make a lot of mistakes that cost them employee engagement, cost them productivity, and ultimately can cost them team members down the line.
Yeah. That's why I think it's so wonderful that you have created something out of that tragic experience, that had such a profound impact on your family. And I know, we're not alone. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in October of 2017, and a similar experience. People mean well when they say,
Yes.
just let me know, or they'll say other things like, oh, you'll be fine. You know,
Yes. Yes.
it's
That
like,
brush off. You'll be fine. It's no big deal.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think people realize how much that the minimizing of what you're experiencing and what your family is experiencing, how harmful that can be. And, but the main reason I love what you're doing is that you're right. not many people think about what is happening in the workplace, as a
Right.
manager or as a leader. We do oftentimes think about the family. We think about friends, we even think about, acquaintances, like people we know in the neighborhood,
Right,
they might
right,
stop by
exactly.
with a casserole, once they hear about what's happening. But I don't think I've ever heard of anyone talk about the workplace and help that you can receive being a manager or maybe even just a coworker. That's why I wanted to remind everybody, anybody who's going to be watching this, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, please feel free to say something in the comments, ask a question, share your story. I have found, and I know Kim is going to talk about this as well, we have just found that there is so much comfort in being able to share your experiences and understand that you're not alone in this, especially if you're an employee and you're having to deal with issues at work.
Yes.
Um, so so Kim, why is it that you think we struggle so hard to know what to say? Because cancer, I know so many people, that have been either they have been diagnosed with cancer or they have a loved one who's been diagnosed with cancer. Um, but they just, even I sometimes find myself, even though I've been through it, when I hear someone else has been, diagnosed, I have to take a moment,
Yes.
and gather my thoughts and think about, well, okay, what did I not appreciate people
Ex
saying to me?
Exactly, exactly. So I think the one thing I wanna point out is that 46% of cancer diagnoses happen with people between the ages of 25 and 64. So those are
Wow.
prime
Mhm.
working years. So almost half of the
Yeah.
diagnoses occur in those ages. And I think that we forget, like we think, oh, it's almost like sometimes we are always shocked when something bad happens at work because
Right.
we sometimes treat it like it's a cocoon. Like somehow work is work and drama is drama in work, but it doesn't affect my outside life and
Yeah.
as we've all learned and seen, especially in 2020, that that's just simply not the case. Why do people say not nice things? I think they say them because of 2 reasons. One, we're not taught. This is not a
Mhm.
topic. We've gone from, if you wanna go way back, we used to live in these small communities, so we would automatically know how to help and someone support someone because we knew them. Now we're in
Right.
these big giant communities where there's a lot of different ways I could support someone, but I don't know what to do. And there's no basis, there's no skeletal framework for people
Mm.
to work from. And so that's the first thing. We've not been taught, we don't know what to do. I mean, 50 years ago, you didn't even say the word cancer, you whispered it. You were like, "She has cancer." Right? So we've
Yeah,
come
yeah.
far from then. The second reason is it's emotional. It's
Mm.
really hard to tap into the fact that someone we care about,
Mhm.
whether we work with them, whether they're our partner, a neighbor, a friend, the post person, someone we care about is being affected by something that we cannot
Mhm.
control, and that if it's left alone, will kill them.
Mhm.
And, because that's what cancer is, right? We don't think about that, but that's what we're really all afraid of, that the cancer is going to kill somebody, the person we care
Right.
about.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. It's hard to let that into your heart. We often
Mhm.
feel weird when we're crying about, when we cry about someone who's dealing with this difficult time. We feel like, why are we crying? Like it's not me. It's because you care about that person and you are sad that they are going through this experience.
Mm.
Even if you don't fully understand what that experience is, you know that it's scary.
Yeah.
And so our reaction sometimes, instead of tapping into that place, is to distance ourselves. Because I can
Mhm.
tell you what, nobody wanted to know that my 40-year-old husband had cancer. Nobody wanted to hear that.
Mhm.
Like, that's too young, and in our 40s, we're going, we feel really good. We're like life, we feel like we've got life, like we understand it to some level. And
Yeah.
so and so nobody wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that some kids may be left fatherless because of this condition.
Right.
So we take a step back. And in that taking a step back, we distance ourselves. And that's where we get into trouble. That's where we
Mhm.
say things like, you'll be okay. Because we need when you say it, you need them to be okay, because
Yeah.
their stuff that they're going through is too scary for you to deal with in your own mortality. And the fact
Mhm.
that you might have cancer right now and you just don't know, right? All that like makes people really, really nervous. And so stepping back and closing down is an easier way to manage someone's pain than it is to actually step in and to engage.
Yeah, it is such an uncomfortable thing, what you just said a moment ago about being in our 40s, because I was 44 when I was
Mm,
diagnosed, and you're right. I mean, 2017 was like a banner year for me and my
yes,
family.
exactly.
I had just published a book. I did a TEDx talk that year. My daughter was going away to school in Atlanta. My son was preparing to go into the Marine Corps. My husband and I were celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary. There were
Yeah.
so many great things. And then all of a sudden, poof,
Yeah.
just out of left field.
Yeah.
The one thing you're just not expecting. And it is uncomfortable, thinking about your own mortality. And I think you're right. Anyone else who is, in that, I guess, same age group, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain, around that. It makes it very difficult, very uncomfortable, especially in the workplace. I mean, think about it,
Yes.
in your 40s, right? We're still in our
Yep.
prime.
Yep. Yep.
We still
Yeah.
have a lot that we can give,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
In the workplace. So it can be an incredibly challenging thing to try to come to terms with that. So
Yes.
what kind of advice when you talk, because you're also an HR leader, so you know in addition to having this very personal experience, so what this feels like and you've witnessed it firsthand, but also now you're an HR leader. What do you say to managers and the leadership, when you go to talk to these companies and talk to departments? What are some of the things that you tell them that, is, I guess, is okay to say? Or, how do you
Right.
start the conversation with them?
So I often start with, because that's the panic. That's usually when people reach
Mhm.
out to me like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? So the first thing I always say is I let them know. Don't say, if you need anything, let me know. And
Mhm.
I will tell people why it's the worst thing you can say. There's three
Mhm.
specific reasons. One, what is anything? Like, really, what is anything? Anything
It
is
is vague,
it's
isn't it?
big. It's big, it's a range. I had a toddler the first time my husband was diagnosed with cancer. Did that mean that you were gonna go pick up, like, my coughing, green snot nose stuff, coming pick up him up from preschool to help me out? Or did you mean that you'd run to the store and get a gallon of milk? Right? Like,
Right.
what is anything? It's too
Yeah.
big. The second reason it's not helpful is you are asking the person who's in crisis, who is not, does not have all their marbles in a basket right
Mhm.
now, to break apart their day and to find the one thing that you might be willing to do.
Mhm.
And so when my husband was diagnosed, I knew we needed meals, and I was excited about this because I hate cooking. So I was super excited to be getting all these meals. But beyond that, I couldn't think of what else
Mhm.
we needed. And it wasn't until people started saying, hey, maybe we should make the kids lunches. Why don't we make an arrangement so the kids can get rides to school? Why don't it was until people started doing that, I just couldn't think of those things because
Yeah.
people were asking me to take apart my day. The third reason it's not helpful, because let's just say I do find that one thing. I can think of that
Mhm.
one thing. Now I have to have the courage when I am in an extremely vulnerable state. I now have to have the courage to ask you to do something that you may not want to do. And the idea that I might get back oh, okay, that wasn't really what I had in mind, but sure. Like, even that hesitancy, it's like, no, right? We are all
Now
claimed
I'm
to
being
be
a burden.
exactly. Nobody wants to be a burden.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so if I have to put myself in a situation where I might be a burden to you, I'm not gonna do it. I'm just not
Mhm.
gonna do it. So those are
Yeah.
the 3 reasons it's not helpful. So that's the first thing. We go through a series of kind of common there's a lot. I'm gonna at the end of this, I'll tell people where they can download 5
Mhm.
phrases never to say and what to say instead. So that's the first part. The second part is we sit down and we just talk about personal experiences, because if you can kind of talk about personal experiences, I've met with managers who have had cancer in their parents had cancer. Their parent died of cancer. So it brings up a whole host of emotions that they didn't
Mhm.
that they're sort of like surprised by. And so whether they've had the cancer in the background or not, whether they've known someone or not, it's just kind of getting their ideas out, because we also all have stereotypes of what it means to have cancer. If you have not had the experience of having cancer or someone around you having cancer, there's a lot of stereotypes, and those stereotypes get smack in the way of you managing the employee with cancer as well as helping the team.
Yeah.
And then we start to talk about, what information has the employee dealing with cancer, because also remember, sometimes it's a spouse, it's a partner, it's,
Right.
it's a parent who has a child who's dealing with cancer. Um, so we talk about what the person has revealed so far. And then I ask very specific questions about, how much do they want to be revealed? So depending on
Mhm.
how that pans out, then we start to talk about, what does the team know? How are you going to help the team? How often is this person going to be at work? Are they going to be able to work? Because that's another kind of stereotype. People think, oh, you have cancer, you're going to take off of work. Not
Mhm.
necessarily. And
Right.
and sometimes they can't. Right? They need the income. They cannot
Yeah.
go without the income. They don't have enough vacation time or PTO saved up. So there's a lot of things that go into play in this.
Mhm.
What are you going to message to the team? That depends a lot on what the person who's dealing with cancer wants messaged to the team. Right? And so even if you're not going to message the specific thing, you have to message something if they're going to be out of the office. How do you message that? How do you handle workload changes? How do you handle the chaos that's going to happen on the team? How long is this going to go on? Thinking about that process, thinking
Mm.
about integration. How you can integrate the person back into the team, whether they need to be integrated back in full time or whether they need to be integrated back into to working from the minimum hours to their full-time hours. Right? What does that look like? And even we have discussions around death. What, so it's really beginning. And then we talk about, how can the team help? If the team wants to help and if the employee is open to the accepting the help, how can the team help without it feeling like a burden? Because some people on the team are not going to want to help. Some people are going to
Yeah.
feel like, hey, you know what? Head in the sand, I'm good. Like, and you have to,
Right.
how do you let them be without feeling like, oh my God, I gotta give $5 to this freaking gift card. I don't really want to give
Right.
$5. Like, how do you manage all that? Because the bottom line is, what managers often forget is the team is watching them and is watching
Yeah.
them very carefully. And whether the team knows that there's a cancer diagnosis or not, the team knows something is wrong. And
Something's happening.
and how
Mhm.
you manage that affects your productivity. I mean, let's just get real business
Mhm.
basics. It affects your productivity, it affects your engagement, and it will definitely affect your turnover. Whether it's 3 months from the diagnosis or a year from the diagnosis, your team is
Yeah.
watching you. And if you've got, if you got team mottos and if you've got sort of a team mission statement and you're not living by that mission statement, or you've got team values and you're not living by those team values, then you're going to find that your employees are going to depart, or they're not going to trust you. They're not going to think that you're worth listening to. There's a whole host of ramifications of how you manage an employee dealing with a crisis.
Yeah. Wow. There is so much that you have to consider. And, I heard you say, even on the HR, especially on the HR side, considering how much does the person want anybody to know about it. And that in
Yes.
itself is a challenge.
Yes.
Do you find that, is there do you have managers come to you because of the fatigue over time? Because, like you mentioned, like down the road, I know for me, it was 2017 when I was diagnosed, and it was, there were a whole host of things that you have to do, right, as a cancer patient, and your
Mhm.
family goes through so much. I was one of the ones who did not take any time off, but I was
Right.
a professor, teaching in the classroom.
Yep.
So I was, I was fortunate in that I had the type of job that there was some flexibility if I had, just that one particular day that I absolutely could not make it in, that wouldn't necessarily been that big of a deal. Or,
Right.
if I could teach hybrid, like maybe there's a
Right.
day to just log in and we would just
Right.
use Zoom or whatever. Um, but even after treatments are quote over, that the journey is not over just
Correct.
because you're suddenly quote in the clear and treatments are done. You're not really in the clear. So,
Right.
um, have you had managers come back to you or come to you, after that and say, wow, I mean, this is still difficult. I mean, they're better now,
Right.
and I'm
Right. They're supposed
still
to
not doing the right
right.
things, right?
Well, that goes I mean, it's so true. That goes with the stereotype, right? The
Mhm,
stereotype of being cured from cancer is you bounce back immediately and that
right.
you have this new view on life. And so
Mhm,
all those
mhm.
things that used to piss you off before don't piss you off anymore. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. And
Sometimes it's
so
worse.
exactly. It's so
Right?
true.
Sometimes I
It's
get
so true.
pissed
They're
at
like they're
everything.
pissed at everything.
You're
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. Exactly. So there are a couple things. I did want to touch on the HR piece. It's really important if you're a
Mhm,
manager and you have an HR team, or even if you can get a membership to like SHRM, it's really important you have conversations with professionals because there are a
mhm.
lot of laws in place, HIPAA and ADA particularly, which
Yes.
you cannot mention that your employee has cancer if they have not given you permission to do so. And I always tell everyone, make sure you get it in writing, right?
Mhm.
So just if you're a manager, please just remember you can't go around talking about this to other people because there are laws in place that are protecting your employees' privacy. Okay, so I just wanted to say that from my HR brain was just my alarms are going off.
Oh, no, 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 that's
Um,
important. That's
yes,
important.
yes. So one of the things I talk to managers about is making sure that they have a work plan, that they sit down with the employee and they have a work plan. And this is not a one and done deal because treatments change. Cancer treatment is not always involving chemo. Sometimes it involves immunotherapy. Sometimes it involves surgery. Sometimes it involves radiation. Sometimes it involves all of that. Sometimes it's a combination of those. So really understanding if your employee is willing to share that with you, what the ramifications of their treatment will be on their work is really important. And then revisiting, because I know my husband's first 2 rounds of chemo, he was like, not too bad. Third one took him out. Took
Mhm.
him out.
I hear that a lot, yeah.
And and it just got worse from there. And
Mhm.
so, at first he was engaging a little bit with people at work, and by the third one around, he was not engaging at all because he couldn't engage barely in life, let alone,
Right, yeah.
work. So really making sure that you're revisiting those work plans again and again and again
Mm,
because the effects of treatment change. And that also goes for when people come back to work. Put together a work plan. Talk to them about, okay, you want to come back, full time. Chemo brain scientifically has been proven. And so you might find that your employee is wicked spacey, that
mhm.
before the chemo, before the cancer, they could come into your office, you would tell them what to do or have a suggestion, and they would run with it. Now you tell they do the same thing and they walk out the door and you're waiting a week and you haven't seen anything and they've forgotten. Right?
Yeah.
So understanding that just because treatment is over doesn't mean it's over. You have to give
Mm,
yourself, the team, and the employee who's dealing with cancer. And this also goes for partners because if you're and it's even harder sometimes if you have an employee who has a partner who has cancer, who has someone else, they look and act normal,
yeah.
but the amount of stress on their brain is huge. And so what we do know from many, many, many studies, stress affects our ability to concentrate, our ability to focus, our ability to get things done, our ability to remember. So even though they may seem like they're okay, they're going to be forgetful, they're going to fall
Yeah.
apart. Their reports are going to come in late. Projects are not going to get done on time. And this is an exaggeration, but just you need to have that work plan in place, even for someone like that, because they're not going to be able to perform at the level that they used to be able to perform at in most cases. Sometimes
Mhm.
people are really good at compartmentalize. Blah, blah, blah. You know what that word is? I can't say.
Yeah, that word.
Compartmentalizing.
That's right, that's
Yes.
right.
So sometimes they're really good and you won't see it. But I think the bigger picture is that you don't know. And you,
Right.
as a manager, don't know until you start asking questions and listening and understanding. And so I think that's the thing. We cannot do, the worst thing I see is managers just assume. They assume
Yeah.
based on their personal experience. They assume based on what they've seen on TV. They assume, they assume that because HR hasn't told them anything, that they don't need to do anything. And
Mm.
that's not true.
Mhm.
HR is often just as blindsided and ill-equipped on this. They're really good. Look, my peers and I, we are good. We should be good. Most of us are really good at at FMLA, at CFRA in your California, if you're in California, at state disability, if you have it in your state, at ADA. We're good at providing that information. We have EAP, employee assistance programs we can
Mhm.
recommend you to. We're good at that stuff. We're not good and we're not often trained at how do we coach, how do we help a manager deal with a sick employee? It's just not something that we often think about. And when, especially with this push on mental health and wellness, it's something that
Mhm.
we really need to start thinking about more often. And it's not rocket science. There really are steps that you can go through, one after another, that will help kind of put together a foundation or a frame, like I talked about, a skeletal frame that you as an HR or the manager and the team can really work and build on. And once you have this framework, you can do it for anybody else in the organization.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. You don't have to
Mhm.
redo it every single time. You've got the questions you need to ask. You know what you need. From those you figure out what you need to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my little thing.
Yeah, and, this is important for anyone who is in a management position to understand that you might be tempted to say, okay, I mean, I really don't have to deal with any of this. It's none of my business. It's going to be, they'll work it out. They'll figure it out.
Right.
They're going to have to just do that. And I think it's important to remember that we're dealing with human beings here. One of the things that it really bothered me. I was on LinkedIn one day and somebody had shared a video of, it was this father who was out in the parking lot, and this was right in the midst of, COVID.
Right.
This dad was in the parking lot looking up at the hospital building where his son was receiving cancer treatments. He was getting
Right.
chemo. And so the father was in the parking lot, like doing little dance moves.
Right.
And
Yep.
then the son was in the window dancing back to
Right. Yeah,
him.
I've seen that
And I
video.
just,
Yes.
yeah, I thought, what a heartwarming video. I was like, oh, look at this dad. He is doing everything he can,
Yep.
to be there for his son. And I thought it was the most wonderful thing. But there was this person who made a comment that, I immediately saw it and it pissed me off. I couldn't let it go. I actually had to say something about it. Why is this on LinkedIn? What does this have to do with business? And I was like, are you serious right
That
now? Did you
dad has a
really
job.
ask that question?
Yeah.
Think about this guy. He could be on his way to work right now. And think
Exactly.
about what his mindset has to be to
Yep.
leave that parking lot and actually go to work. These are
Exactly.
human beings we're dealing with. They're not
Yeah.
robots.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I couldn't believe it, but I guess that there are people out there who think that way.
But I think it's just the disconnect. I think we forget. It's
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
bubble, right? There's a work bubble. We
Right.
go to
Yeah.
work and we're at work and we do work and then we leave. And we
Yeah.
forget that, right, that father may be
Mhm.
going to work so he can keep his insurance so that his son can get the treatment that he needs.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, we don't
Yeah.
know, and I think that that's the thing, we forget there's a major disconnect.
Mhm.
There's a big movement about bringing your whole self to work, which I'm not
Mhm.
particularly a fan of because I don't think that
Mhm.
organizations are equipped to deal with
Right.
people's
Yeah.
whole
Do you
self.
really want all that?
Exactly. I mean, I'm in HR and I'm like, could you bring maybe half yourself to work? I'm willing to,
Right.
three-quarters of yourself to work, but I don't think I want the whole thing.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to bring my whole self to work. I mean,
That's right.
but but in that statement is really what we're talking about is kind of paying attention to what is going on in everyone
Mhm.
else's lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is something that we do need to start doing in businesses because look,
Mhm.
if you're going through some type of tragedy, and I don't know about it, then I think you're just a jerk for not doing your work. I do.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
pissed. I'm mad that you're not
Yeah.
doing the work you're supposed to be doing. I don't understand what your problem is. Are you on drugs?
Right.
Maybe you're
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
drugs. Are you partying too much at night? Like I'm spinning out and
Or you
telling my
obviously don't care. You
you don't
obviously don't
care.
care about
Yes,
your
yes.
job.
We
Yeah.
are in absence of information, we will make up stories. And 99.9% of the time, the stories we make up are negative about
Yeah.
what's going on. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not like, wow, his marriage is falling apart. That must be what's going on. Or maybe he has a sick
Mhm.
child. It's he's not doing his job. He's being so lazy and he's putting more work on me. And it's just so unfair. And I'm really mad about this. And I'm going to go talk to my manager about it. Right. We assume the worst. And I think that's sort of where our brains work. But if we can start to talk about, I mean, the beauty of talking about cancer in the workforce is it allows people to talk about other things, right? So
Yes.
maybe someone has
Mhm.
lupus and it's just, I mean, it's a horrible
Yeah.
disease. It's really hard. Maybe someone's grandmother died. And although people have poo-pooed it, they were really close with their grandmother. It's a significant loss for them. A
Yeah.
divorce affects the way you work. So
Right.
so really just being more sensitive and understanding, and I really wanna be very clear about this. You can be compassionate and still be goal focused and oriented and still get things done. I think there's
Yes.
a myth that if I have to acknowledge what you're going through and be compassionate, then I can't ask you to get the work done. But that's not
Right.
true. I can acknowledge what you're going through, and we can sit down and say, okay, here's the work that needs to be done. Let's figure out a way to take some of this off your plate, to give it to someone else, to
Yeah.
deal with it, to get this done. It allows for that conversation for that employee to feel included and counted. And I want to also say this, what we forget is a lot of us get our identity from work. And I know we
Mhm.
shouldn't and we should feel like we're good people. But look, when I do my job well, I feel really good. And when I
Right.
do my
Yeah.
job crappy, or someone tells me I'm doing my job crappy, or I think I've done my job crappy, I don't feel good. So,
Mhm.
an employee, wow, I'm just getting really loud and passionate about this.
Yeah, no, no, I love it.
Y'all,
I
this is my
love
thing.
it.
Um, so so when an employee is in crisis and they come to you and you sit down and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry this is going on. Let's figure out a way to support you. And we still have work to get done. Let's figure out a way to figure out what you can do." Like, that is such
Yeah.
an incredible statement of you matter. The work that you does matter. You're still a team member here. We still think you have good input to give. Can you help us figure out how to do it?
Yeah.
And the message it
Yeah.
sends to the team is even if you're messed up in your head, we're still
Yeah.
going to figure you got something going on in your life, we're still going to figure out how to work with you. And
Yeah.
talk about a raise in employee engagement. You now have an employee that's engaged and wants to do work well with your organization and wants to be that important person, feels like they have something to offer. So you've
Yeah.
just heightened your engagement and you've also just improved your productivity at a time when most productivity goes down.
Yeah. And as someone who goes into organizations and talks to them about communication, skills and feedback. And one of the things that I talk about is setting up a healthy, positive communication climate. Because in order for some of these conversations to happen, this work starts now. It doesn't start when you
Yes.
get an employee that suddenly has, fallen ill with something. I mean,
Yes.
you need to start the work today to set up the precedents that, yes, I mean, we are a team. We understand that we can be compassionate. We're firm but fair. We
Yes.
have open communication. We know what the expectations are.
Yep.
That has to start now because
Yes.
if you don't have that type of a communication climate where your employees feel like they can approach you to have that conversation now, it's going to be even worse when they do have something more serious, that's
Exactly.
happening to them.
A lot of employees will not tell their managers because they're afraid of what their managers will
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if that's the situation, and I know managers say, "Oh, we have an open door," but the reality is, if you don't step outside that door and really
Mhm.
talk and get to know your employees, that open door means nothing. They're not gonna
Yeah.
come in because even though you see yourself as just a human being who's like,
Mhm.
poop stinks, no other way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, um, you are still a manager. Your employees do not see you that way. You are a manager. You are their boss, and it's the dynamic that's there. And
Yeah.
so, in order for them to feel like it's good to come to you, you have to model that it's good for you to come to them. And you have to look. I'm not asking people to, talk about the death of, their grandmother, the next
Mhm.
day after it happened, but you can come in and say, you know what? Oh my God, I just had the worst morning. And I
Yeah.
feel like I almost wanna start it over again because it was just so crappy. Like, that
Yeah.
humanness is really important because otherwise your employees aren't gonna come to you. But that's the HR side of
Mhm.
me, talking
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was having lunch with a colleague a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the challenges of being managers, in the workplace
Yep.
when challenges like this come up. And she told me about this one particular organization that she was working with, and right after the George Floyd incident happened, and one of the employees became very upset because she got to work. She was very upset about what had happened,
Right.
and nobody was saying anything about
Yeah.
anything. And she felt like I felt like I was being ignored, or something. And she was the only Black female in the department,
Right.
and I think everybody else was white, in the
Yeah.
department.
Yep.
And, so she felt like she was alone,
Y
and then she felt like, "No, I really can't bring up anything
Right.
because
Right.
what is the
This
reaction
this is
going."
not a safe place. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, so that's just an example of that, setting up that precedence of getting out there, letting them see that you are someone who is willing to, open up a dialogue, be approachable,
Yep.
and set that up for your employees. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen.
And the way I look at it, we can go back to what to say. So look at it
Mhm,
this way. When you come in, when something bad happens to you or something good happens to you, you want to share it. You want to tell
mhm,
somebody
mhm.
because you want it witnessed. Right. And that's the bottom line is you want it witnessed. You want someone to go, no, or oh my gosh, that's so great. You want to be witnessed. So that's exactly what happened with George Floyd. That's exactly what
Yeah.
happens when your employee tells you that they have cancer. First of
Mhm,
all, they have worked up the courage to come into the office. They are nervous. They don't
mm.
wanna speak it. If it's new to them, which it usually is, right? It's still fresh. Every single time they say it, it brings it to the surface.
Right,
They're
yeah.
afraid of crying in your office. They're
Mhm,
afraid of being seen as weak. They're terrified because they don't know if they're gonna live, right? Just,
mhm,
you just been given
mhm,
and so your job as a manager, whether you're in HR or whether you're the manager of this employee, is to literally sit there and go, I am so sorry.
mhm, mhm,
Like, this breaks my heart.
mhm,
This is so hard to hear,
mhm.
right? Your first and foremost job is to witness their pain. That's
Yeah,
the thing you need to do. Then you can start to go into action. A mistake I often see managers say is someone will say something that will give them the message, and then they'll go, we will support you in any way possible. And it's almost the other side of if you need anything, let me know. It's too
right,
big. And you, as an organization, as a manager, cannot support them any way possible
right.
because how that employee interprets anything is now no longer left up to you. you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they can interpret it meaning, "Oh, you'll get extra vacation days," or "You'll be okay if I don't show up for work, if I show up for work for late." I mean, they can hold on to that message and interpret it any way they want down the line. So I
Yeah.
often coach managers, don't say that, but to say, "We will figure out a way that we can support you." That's very simple,
Yes.
and it's true. And if that support means that you get them an Uber, a share ride gift card so that they can get themselves
Mhm.
back and forth to work or back and forth to their treatments without driving, or if that support means that you're going to, give them some time off or whatever it is, or you're going to have people donate vacation hours so the person can not lose, income, whatever it is you're going to do, you have an option, but don't leave the door open with anything. Be really specific because the reality is you're still running a business. You still have KPIs that need to be met. You have goals. You're still on the hook for getting the things done that your department is in charge of. And so you have to balance, you're going to have to learn to balance the incredible amount of empathy and sympathy. I think sympathy is important here.
Yeah.
Empathy, sympathy with getting work done. And I'm
Mm.
here to tell you that it can be done. It absolutely can be done. But there is a balance, and there are moments the work is going to feel like it's more important, and moments the compassion is going to feel like it's more important. One of the things I'm going to tell you, this really short story. A manager called me and he said he felt absolutely horrible because an employee had come in and told him that her husband had cancer. And his first thought was, "Oh, crap. Then now she's gonna be spending more time there, and I really need her to finish this project, and this project isn't gonna get done." So that's the first thought, right? And he
Yeah.
felt horrible about having he didn't say that out loud, thank God. I know managers who have
Yeah,
said
I know.
those things out loud.
The
But
blurting that out.
exactly. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt so guilty. And the problem with his guilt is that because he thought that and he thought it was wrong to think that, he then was starting to lean on the other side of being way over compassionate and then
Mm.
risk not taking care of his team and taking care of the work that he had to get done. And
Yes.
so I talk a lot to managers about, look, you're going to have some thoughts that are not going to be quote unquote kind thoughts that you think that a human should
Yeah.
have. They're just thoughts.
Yeah.
There's no power to them. They're just thoughts. And if you don't like them, take the little imaginary stick, hit yourself in the back, and then toss the stick away
Right.
because you're
Yeah.
human. You are human. And oftentimes, when we get confronted with really hard news, we don't, our minds wanting to control, want not being able to take in everything, find one small thing that they can manage.
You're
It's
right.
one small thing that they can think about because it's just too much overload for the rest of the brain. And so
Yeah.
it's a really common thought. So if you're a manager and you had that thought, it's okay. I promise you it's okay. You're not a bad human being.
Right. Congratulations, you are human.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
Surprise.
Surprise!
But I do
Exactly.
appreciate what you just said about the balancing the empathy with also the action of what you do still have responsibilities to the team, to the workplace. Of course, there are things that you're going to have to maybe shuffle around, but that goes back to another thing that you said that I really appreciate. Having that moment with that employee who's received some really bad news that we're gonna we'll figure this out. We'll figure something out, and it kind of takes the pressure off of both of you at that time. If you're the
Yes,
manager, you don't have to have all the answers right then and there. And then the person who's dealing with the news, they don't have to have all the answers right then and there either, because you're
right.
right, we don't. And I will tell you, you know, I I can't remember how far into it, maybe just the first month or two, into it. And I had a meeting with my nurse navigator, and my
Mhm.
husband was sitting there with me. And she just kind of looked at me and she was like, "Have you had a chance to really process what this means?" So this was
Right.
like before, I was having more surgeries and everything coming up. And then the radiation was, coming down the road. And when she asked me that question, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had not, like the day I found out I had cancer, I cried, but
Yeah,
then I didn't cry after that. I
right.
went into survival mode and
Yes.
I was just, let's do this. But when she caused me to stop, and say, have you had a chance to really process what this means? I fell apart in that chair.
Yes.
I fell apart in that chair.
Yes.
So, you really can't anticipate when those emotional moments, will happen. And I think that's also important for managers and for team members to understand as well. That person one day will be perfectly fine and work is an escape.
Right.
They don't have to think about anything else,
Right.
and that's the perfect thing that they need. And then other days they're going to show up and they are just a blubbering mess.
Yes, and that's very, very true. And the other part of it is, I mean, we might as well talk about is there's death. Not
Yeah.
all cancers,
Yeah.
in my case, the cancer did not turn out like there was a
Right.
great remission and a happy ending.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
death does happen. And when that happens in the workforce, there's a whole nother layer that needs to be dealt with because it's not
Hmm.
like, I know companies mean well when they do this, they bring in a crisis counselor and they sit them in the room for a couple days and then they kind of disappear. And that's just the beginning of grief. Grief doesn't go away in a couple
Right.
days. You still have to
No. No.
walk past that person's office or cubicle. That office or cubicle needs to be cleaned out. Someone needs to go to the house and pick up the equipment. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens, and there's what do you do in Zoom meetings? Work responsibilities, and so giving employees, and again, this is put on the manager, and I hope that HR would help support them. But
Yeah.
there's so many things that companies can do to grieve the loss of an employee and let the
Yeah.
employees grieve the loss of that person.
Yes.
Because we sweep it under the rug. Like, it's like, oh, well, it's so sad. I often hear people say, I don't know why I'm crying because they're dead,
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're not going to see them again because it's
Mhm.
loss,
Yeah.
because even if you didn't like them, they were there and now
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
You know? And so
And
we often
your entire office, your entire department now, is different,
Yes.
because of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so, again, this, what I hope to help managers and HR teams do is to find the space between, managing the emotions that come up with cancer or loss or, any type of health crisis with being part of a community and being productive. And I
Yes.
think there is an absolute, combining of those 3 things that can be done, and when you do that, whew, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's a place I wanna work at,
Right.
it's a place I
Yeah.
wanna stay and work at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Kim, I'm so happy that you're out there doing this work
Oh,
because
thank
I
you.
I know that so many people really need to hear this. And like I said, you're the only person that I have heard of, that I know of, that has this specific goal. We always think about friends and family, but again, we rarely stop to think about how this is impacting the workplace and the coworkers and the managers. As we wrap this up, is there anything that I didn't ask, or is there anything that you think is a really important, just something to mention, that maybe anyone who's watching right now or listening later on, might need to hear?
So, I am not here. My husband died 13 years ago, and our kids were
Mhm.
12, 9, and 7 at the time, and it was
Mm,
horrific. It was a horrific
mm,
experience that kinda kept on going, right? Because it's not just the
mhm.
1st year, it's the 2nd year, the 3rd, the 5th. And people often say, "Oh my gosh, Kim, you're so strong, you're so courageous," and that's not it. That is not it. I'm standing here because of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small little things that people did for myself, my husband, and our kids. And
Yeah.
this included coworkers and his
Mhm.
boss. And I want people to know that they matter, because
Yeah.
I'm standing here because those people took action because they said, "I can't do anything big or grand for her, but I've this one little thing hopefully will help her feel better. Hopefully will
Yes.
help him feel good. Hopefully will make him laugh." And they did this one little thing. And
Mm.
that and those one little things all combined together
Yeah.
are have allowed me to survive. And
Mhm.
so my message to everyone is you really matter. And sometimes we forget, in this big world, you can't take the cancer away. You can't give them a kind of treatment that's going to make it better for them. You just can't. But
Mhm.
what you can do is you can show up as yourself in their life and just do one small thing. Because
Yeah.
that one small thing, when you do it, you are saying to them, your journey sucks. And
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. And here's something that I hope will make you feel better because I care about you. What a gift that is.
Yes.
What a gift. So don't play small. Even if you don't know what to do, you can tell the person, I don't know what to do for you. I want to do
Mhm.
something and I don't know what to do for you. And I don't want you to tell me what to do for you, but
Mhm.
I just want you to know that I want to do something for you because I care about you and I'm sorry this is happening to you. That is a beautiful thing to say because we all just want to
Yeah.
be witnessed. We just want to be seen. And when you can do an act of love, you let that other person be seen. So that's my message is you matter.
Mm.
You really matter.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Kim,
Oh,
for
thank
that.
you.
How do we contact you? Give us all of your info because I know there's somebody somewhere is going to want to get in touch with you. I
Sure.
know
So
it.
I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. And I do LinkedIn Lives every Thursday. So I'll be doing those, and you can reach out to me. And if you have a question you want answered on a LinkedIn Live, please let me know. They're really short. They tend to be about 15 to 17 minutes long. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to answer a question. But here's how to reach me. I'm at 100actsoflove.com. And that is the number 100. And if you want to know 5 phrases never to say to anybody with cancer, why not to say them and what to say instead, you can go to 100actsoflove.com/ what not to say. Very simple, no spaces, what not to say. And then lastly, I did write a book. Hold on, let me get it. So awkward. But that's what,
Reaching for
oops,
the book,
and then
reaching for the book.
and then I'm shaking my desk. But this is what
Yeah,
makes lives so much fun is that they're real.
that's right. You never know what's gonna happen. That's it.
Exactly. So
But
y'all, I forgot,
exciting,
I meant to grab this book and put it here, but I forgot.
right?
Think I keep one within reach because
And
it's
it's
happened
all
before.
good. Hey.
Exactly. So this is 100 Acts of Love, a girlfriend's guide to
Mhm.
loving your friend through cancer or loss. It is
Oh,
meant to be a really simple, easy read so that you can pick it up and find a quick tip, something you can do for
mm,
somebody. You can find it on Amazon and you can also find it on my website. So yeah, please, there's no stupid question. We aren't taught to manage our emotions or the emotions of others when it comes to this topic. And I often say if one in three of us are going to get cancer, the other two better know what to do and how to support.
yes. That is an excellent way to end this because that right there, that's all we need to know. 1 in 3, the other 2 better know. And the great thing is that there are resources and you're a huge resource out there
Thank
for
you.
anyone who needs that. Make sure that all of that information is in the show notes so anyone who needs to get in contact with you, they'll be able to do that. Again, from the bottom of my heart, Kim, thank you so much for agreeing
Oh,
to share your wisdom in this and your experience. And you're doing a lot of good for a lot of people. And I just hope you know how much you are appreciated.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And thank you for what you do. I mean, we had the side talk, we hit it off right away. And,
Yeah,
thank you for taking the time to come into organizations and really help them communicate better. Cause honestly, that's the bottom line.
that's right. That's
It
right.
really is. If you can do it well, everything will move well. If you do it poorly, it's not going to go so well.
That's right.
So
And
yeah,
and there's no shame in seeking out help for that.
exactly. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Really appreciate you.
All right, everybody, that's it. We're going to end the broadcast now, so y'all stay tuned. And you know how this works. The video will be in LinkedIn and on Facebook and on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and rewatch it at any time. But also, this will be. I'll take the audio, repackage it in a couple of weeks. It'll be out there in on all of the podcast platforms. So stay tuned for that as well. All right, bye, everybody.